This episode will encourage you to expand your vision of what's possible when joy leads your legacy.
One of the hardest things that a person has to do that many people, I think, push off to the side is taking that moment for reflection and self-examination. Because it seems like I don't have the time to sit down and think about this, but it's really in making that time to reflect and examine your vision, your values, your mission, that you're able to not only clearly move forward, but you're actually able to take joy in the process of standing in that decision.
And with all this, we'll be discussing how leaders can cultivate a culture where people feel seen, valued, and empowered to thrive.
I don't know that people really consider happiness or joy in their careers when they're searching for opportunities, but also in thinking about the what's next. Previously, it was like, I need to do what I need to do to get income coming in. But it sounds like what you were thinking about was really anchored in not only the vision for the moment and this next career move, but how can this benefit me for the long haul?
I think we focus on salary and location and other things, but it has to be a right cultural fit for you. And an interview is as much as you interviewing the employer as the employer is interviewing you. And sometimes people don't think about that. And if people are not considering that, I really would urge people to think about that more seriously.
Hey guys, you're listening to the JOYrney To Purpose Podcast with Erica Lasan. The road to joy and purpose can feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and sometimes, because others don't always understand it, it can be isolating and lonely. For almost 30 years of my life, I identified myself through roles and titles that put pressure on me to perform, but often left me feeling empty and void of purpose. But things got real when I discovered I'd be gaining yet another new title, that of mommy. It was at that point of surrender that I chose joy. Now, as a corporate joy strategist, speaker, and executive coach, I help working women, mothers, and caregivers in transitional phases of life find joy, purpose, and healing in what's next. In this podcast, we dive deep into stories, lessons, and transparent conversations to uncover vision manifesting joy gems that are sure to help you rediscover, reconnect, and recommit to your purpose and identity in joy. One feel-good thing at a time. Hey. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the JOYrney To Purpose Podcast with me, Erica Lasan. As a corporate joy strategist, my work revolves around helping high-achieving women and organizations build workplaces that prioritize a culture of well-being, retention, and joy. I have been eagerly waiting and anticipating sharing today's conversation with you all because today we are joined by a woman whose career, leadership, and journey speak for themselves. Okay, I'm sitting down with Sherry Cassano, the Chief Talent Officer and Senior Vice President of People Experience over at Pfizer. And as exciting as that big name may be, what makes this conversation so special isn't just Sherry's resume. And trust me, her resume is impressive. But what I really loved about this conversation was getting to know the person behind it. It's Sherry's humanity, her motherhood journey, and her unique approach to fostering leadership in others, no matter what space she occupies. With all that being said, if you're looking to up your leadership game and build an organization where joy is one of your core values, then you are in the right place. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading a team, or navigating motherhood as you build a career at the same time. My prayer is that this episode encourages you to expand your vision of what's possible. Let's dive in.
You are in for such a treat today because today we are speaking with Sherry Cassano, the Chief Talent Officer and Senior Vice President of People Experience over at Pfizer. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to go on this journey adventure together. I first would like to kind of give the listeners some context to how this even happened or why I'm so excited to have you on the show. Back in 2022, I believe it was, I did a workshop with Pfizer. I remember you remember? Okay, so hopefully it left a great mark and a strong impression. But what you may not know is that was actually my first corporate engagement.
That I did not know. No, I did not know that. So
Wow.
you did really great. You did a wonderful job.
Praise God. Thank you so much. It was like my little secret up until today. But during that experience, there was a little bit of a break in the workshop where you came in and you spoke with the members of the team that were a part of the JOYrney experience. And I just remember seeing you and being so excited that you were in the room, being so excited to hear the words that you were speaking to your team because it wasn't just about them growing professionally and the mark that they could make at Pfizer in their growing in their career. But what I really heard behind the words that you were saying was your care for them as people, like the way that you truly deeply cared about them as people. And it just got me so excited about what you all are doing at Pfizer, but also just about you as a leader. And I immediately was just so curious about what brought you to this space, what brought you to this level of understanding, how you maintain that for yourself, and also seeing you as a Black woman in this position of executive leadership and bringing up the next generation was just very exciting for me. So I know I said this before we started recording, but I feel like I'm trying to contain my excitement because I have so many questions.
I am ready. I am ready.
So, for all of the JOYrney listeners who are tuned in today, I would love it if you would start by sharing a little bit about your JOYrney story. How did you come to this position of working with Pfizer, but more importantly, just this point in your career? You've been there for over 21 years, or about 21 years at this point, and based on what I've seen, you have held 15 positions in the organization. So I just feel like there's so much juice to squeeze out of your experience. So please let us know a little bit about your JOYrney story.
Yes. So I go back way back when I was 18 years old, and it's relevant. I stumbled into the profession of human resources through an internship. I had never heard of human resources, but I was offered an opportunity to be an En-ROADS intern. So En-ROADS is an organization that helps place young minority students into internships with corporations with the goal, at that time, the goal was very clear to be hired at the end of the internship period permanently for a role. And so I was placed in an internship with the company Clairol, the hair care company, in human resources. All I know is that the manager said your job is never the same. Every day is different, and that was really appealing to me. But that's all I understood it to be. So I go into the internship for human resources, and I knew at the end of that summer that I had found what I wanted to do. It was very clear. It was very people oriented, and because you're working with people, she was absolutely right. Nothing is the same, and I felt like I was in the know. I had to hold, very confidential information, and I did not feel burdened by that. I was excited by it, and I felt privileged to have it. And so I entered into human resources. I actually interned with that company for all 4 summers. And at the end of that internship, the company had been sold, so I didn't end up going to work for them, but I ended up working in human resources for a financial services company. I worked for that company for about 3 years in recruiting and then in business partnering. And then I needed to move to New York because I was getting married, and Pfizer happened to call. And so did not realize that I was signing up for 21 plus years of my life, but it was the best decision I could have made. And so I entered into Pfizer, and at Pfizer, I quickly learned to say yes to any opportunity that was offered to me. So because of the ability to try different things and the willingness to just trust the people who were my mentors or managers at the time, I had the privilege to work in every division or in HR, but every business, supporting every business in the company. That helped me to learn about the company, to understand the different facets of it, and to take on jobs of increasing responsibility. And so I've had the opportunity to lead HR, or we call it people experience, for many divisions. My current role, I'm responsible for leading people experience for our commercial businesses. So we have a U.S. commercial division and we have an international commercial division. So I get to lead the HR teams for those divisions. But I also, as you said, I'm Pfizer's Chief Talent Officer, and that is responsible for everything from recruiting to our talent management, to our culture and rewards and recognition, a lot of things that bring people joy. So I think I don't want to get into job by job by job, but it's probably 15 plus at this point. The key to it is being very open-minded, being curious, being really good at what you do, and not in an arrogant way, but recognizing that it's a privilege to come to work every day. My mentality is that Pfizer deserves to get the best out of me every day. And so trying to approach my work with that mentality, I think is how you end up 21 years later, 15 plus jobs, and a wonderful career that I'm incredibly grateful and proud of.
Man, oh man, oh man. That was amazing. I feel like you touched on so much in such a short amount of time. And there were so many joy nuggets that in hearing your story, I believe our listeners, and I know personally I can glean from. One of which being the fact that joy is something that comes from the work that you do, and you do have to be passionate about it, but just a willingness to say yes, a willingness to be open, and a willingness to lead with curiosity. I am really curious though, in hearing you share this, you said that Pfizer called. Was it something where you put yourself out there for that particular role, or was it that you were just so good at what you did that Pfizer happened to scout you in your relocation?
No, it truly was. They called. A recruiter that was working, had been hired for this search, called me, and it was the timing actually wasn't quite ideal because I was getting married the following year, but they said, well, these processes can take a long time. So I said, okay, great, because I really don't want to leave until next year. And I think from the time I went to my first interview to offer, it was 3 weeks. So it went very,
Wow.
I accelerated my move to New York. But again, it was beyond. I knew pretty quickly when I went to my first interview, the people I met with, I felt like I knew I would be happy if I worked here. Just it was a connection with those individuals. To this day, I still keep in touch with that hiring manager. She's no longer with the company, but I still keep in touch with her. And actually, many people from that original team, many are gone, some are still there. So it was a very special moment that brought me there, I feel. And I knew pretty instantly that if they offered me the job, I was taking it because it just was such a nice, sometimes you just have a connection with people. And I had a connection with the people. And then as I learned more about the company and what they were doing, it was a connection to the company.
Wow. My goodness. 3 weeks, start to finish in there.
Right. But that's how life is. When you want something to go quickly, it doesn't. And, in this case, open. I would have been okay with it being a very long process. It just was not a very long process here.
But you know what I hear in you sharing that? One, that Pfizer knows what they want when they want it. Okay, they gonna hop on an opportunity to like get the best that is being offered to them, and making sure that they have the best. And apparently, and obviously, you were the best person for the job. It sounds like they also recognize that you could stay there for the long haul, that you were a really good culture fit, not just for the moment, but for the future. But there's something else. One of the things that stood out to me in what you just said was the fact that you knew within that first interview that you would be happy there. I don't know that people really consider happiness or joy in their careers when they're searching for opportunities, but also in thinking about the what's next, especially, well, maybe now it's a little different for the generations, but I know that previously it was like, I need to do what I need to do to get income coming in. I'm going to take the job that's paying me the most, and I'll stay until it no longer serves me, and then I'll move on to the next opportunity. But it sounds like what you were thinking about was really anchored in not only the vision for the moment and this next career move, but how can this benefit me for the long haul? Or was that your mindset as you were considering it?
Yeah. So again, I wasn't thinking, when I started Pfizer, I didn't necessarily think I was going to be there 21 years, or I wasn't thinking about that. But what I did know is I was actually very happy where I was. So at my previous employer, they were People's United Bank. They've been purchased now. I think M&T owns them. But I was extremely happy. I felt valued, appreciated. I loved the work that I was doing. I was really only looking to leave because I was moving states. And so happiness was certainly in the equation for me because I had already felt that from the beginning. I was fortunate that, my internship for 4 summers, I loved the people I worked with. I loved the culture, the environment. My first employment out of college, which was this company, People's Bank, similarly, nice cultural fit. I was happy. I had direct access to the head of HR at that point, and again, felt very valued. So going to the next move That was absolutely in the equation, cultural fit. And I do think people don't put enough emphasis on that. I think we focus on salary and location and other things, but it has to be a right cultural fit for you. And an interview is as much as you interviewing the employer as the employer is interviewing you. And sometimes people don't think about that, but think about how much time we spend at work with the people that you work with. I travel a lot for work. I travel with these individuals. I can't even imagine how that would be if I did not enjoy their company. It's not even like, can I tolerate? I actually enjoy their company. And
Yes.
you are spending business trips and, all of these places, going to Asia and, 14-hour journeys. You need to enjoy people's company. I do for me. Again, wasn't all very conscious, but looking back, it would not have worked. And I certainly would not have been here this long if I was not being brought joy at the place, not only from the job that I do, the people I work with, the overall culture of the company. That all has to be in the equation. And if people are not considering that, I really would urge people to think about that more seriously.
Yes. Oh my goodness. In hearing you say that you loved the culture and even considering a culture fit, what was it about Pfizer's particular culture that made you feel like this is the place for me?
I would hear myself saying, and I would actually getting to the point my team at the time would make fun of me. They're like, "There's Sherry saying it again." I would probably in that first 2 months, once a week say, "I love this company." And it would be different things that would make me say those things, but the common denominator was people. The people were so friendly, very generous with their time, available at all levels, at all levels. And that was not really foreign to me from the previous company, but it was a smaller company. So again, coming from a smaller, more regional based company to this global company, I guess I had my own expectations that maybe it would be different. As I said, I had access to the CHRO at my last company, but I didn't necessarily expect to have that sort of access at this larger company or to senior leaders just because it is so large. But it was very clear to me that even though it was this big company, it still had a bit of a small company feel in terms of people being so friendly and open. And that is even
Yes.
to this day. I remember my assistant, the current assistant I have, her first day at the company, I was walking her around the floor and we happened to be
Mhm.
on the executive floor and our CEO was happened to be on the floor that day. And so I just said to her, here's our CEO. And I said to our CEO, this is one of our new hires. She's my assistant. And he sat there and talked to her for about 5, 10 minutes. And she walked, and I didn't even honestly think too much of it, if I'm being honest. And she walked after and she was like, she was starstruck. And she goes, I can't believe he talked to me. And I go, what? Of course he talked to you. And she goes, Sherry, it doesn't work like this other place. You know what? You're right. You are right. But because you start to take it for granted, like, well, of course he's going to speak. She's one of his employees. And so that I felt really, it wasn't the CEO in my case, but I just felt that the people around me, the people that I had to work with, my clients that I would be their HR partner for, were just so welcoming. And I felt instantly like I belonged. There are some cultures
Mm,
where you have to prove that you
mhm.
there, whatever that looks like in that form of that culture. Pfizer is much more of, well, you've been hired, so we trust that you have the credentials to be here and we're going to welcome you. That's not, I've really learned from acquisitions or from friends who work at other places, that's not necessarily the culture everywhere.
Yes.
It's not right or wrong, it's just what's right for you. And I think now having grown up through this sort of culture, this is much more what fits my needs and my style because I similarly am a person that I trust easily. I assume, I trust that you're going to do the right thing unless you prove me otherwise. Other people
Yes.
work the other way. You have to, earn that trust. So again, it's a fit culturally.
Yes. So you mentioned the fact that people were generous with their time and passionate about the work and all of those things contributing to your enjoying the culture and being able to grow in the culture. But how does an organization get to that point? Yes, trust is part of the process, but I mean, like you mentioned, it isn't common for the CEO to walk around and talk to anybody and everybody and being so generous with their time, because I do think that sometimes when it comes to leadership, the idea is I am very important and you have to earn your right to speak with me or to be even in the same room. But how is it that your organization has been able to foster this culture of present leadership and generosity and passion and all of these things that make the culture what it is? And I'm asking this for people who are building organizations, those who are at the top of executive leadership, but also for those who are in the process of working their way up, who see themselves in those future leadership positions. How do you begin to foster and build that type of a space and environment?
So I have a couple thoughts on this. One, I think any good leader recognizes that you're only as good as the people that you have in your organization. So, once that's the difference between being an individual contributor and then being a leader. Actually, as a leader, it's really not solely about what I directly contribute. It's about my ability to also bring out the best of my organization because quite frankly, they're doing the bulk of the work, right? My job
Hmm.
is to make sure that I'm setting the vision, I'm asking the right questions, but the core work for the majority of the time is being done by other people. So I think just that recognition that that is your role as a leader, I think sets the tone that, of course, you should be accessible to those people because if you have information that would be of benefit to them, if you can help remove barriers, if whatever you can do, that's only going to benefit you and your company. So I think that is fundamental. So this notion of leadership is removed from the people, I guess that could work at certain companies. To me, you wouldn't be able to be bringing out the best of the individuals who work for you, or work with you. I think also a lot of not everybody, but a lot of people have also worked at this company a long time. And that also helps because if we have some of our senior leaders who have been here 30 years, 25, they know a lot of people too. So they're still just, fill in the blank of that leader to many people because they've worked with them in many capacities. So I think just naturally, because we have longer tenured employees, that also just naturally fits itself because people remember you when you were not the CEO or an executive officer or
Mm.
your leader. They remember you. And so that also is, I think, helps. But it's not everyone because not everyone on our executive leadership team has been here 20 plus years, but we do have quite a few. So I think that also helps culturally with this idea that leadership is not so removed in our
Yeah.
company's instance. And, so I was just reading, someone sent me something that says, you know, an employee may not remember everything that you said to them, but it's this play on, but they'll remember how you made them feel. But they will remember when a senior leader was nice to them, was kind to them. That they will remember. And I read that and I thought, yeah, I guess that is pretty true. But how sad is it that again, that's a privilege that a senior leader was nice to you? We should be
Hmm.
people. I mean, what do you mean? But I can appreciate that, someone that you perceive is so much more senior than you took the time to exchange a conversation that may leave a lasting impression, as it did with my assistant with our CEO. So again,
Yeah.
it just should not be lost on you that these are human beings. We're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all show up to our company for the same reason in one shape or form to make sure that our organization finds breakthroughs for patients. I mean, that's what bonds everybody at Pfizer, regardless of what your title is, what your level is. We all support that purpose.
Okay. So, in hearing you say all of those things, three things stood out to me. One, treat people the way you want to be treated. Two, it's really about showing up as the best version of yourself to do the job and recognizing that the core vision is what drives the ability to stay present in doing what it is that you do and doing it well. And also just considering the fact that when it comes to culture, and this is something I think about often, especially in regards to joy, it's not just about what you say the culture should be, but really about how each individual is living it out. Because culture isn't just something you put on paper. It's not something that you decide in a boardroom that it's going to be what it's going to be, but then you don't necessarily take the initiative or the time to understand what that means and how it plays out for each person that's a part of the organization because all those things matter. And each person matters in the ability to carry it. I feel like there's so much that can be taken about what you just said, not just in terms of the organization, but even just everyday life. There are certain things that I want to talk about later on in this conversation in regards to your ability to juggle motherhood and your career, because I think that all of these things also touch on how you lead your home and how you nurture your children and things like that. But I wanted to mention something around how you even came into HR because and this is kind of going back and backtracking a bit, but you mentioned that you didn't know anything about HR coming into your career, but it sounds like you were literally born to do this. Do
Well,
you feel that way?
I do. I said I feel grateful. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I keep telling her, like, you'll figure out, explore. Most people, takes them a few tries to, figure out what they want to do. But I recognized that I was unique, that I figured it out at 18. And it was clear to me there was nothing else that I wanted to do. Now, HR is very broad. There's a lot of different facets of it, but the core element of working with the goal of trying to provide an experience for the people of an organization, that is the part that for me, I was very clearly born to do. And whatever capacity of HR that I've been in throughout the years, that is sort of the common thread of it all. We work to make sure that we provide a really good experience for the employees. And that doesn't always mean saying yes, but your focus on what is their experience going to be at this company. And that I love. So I do feel that this was the career that I was supposed to be in. And that's why I'm, been now 25 years working in this space and still come with the same amount of passion. In fact, I feel like I love it more now than I even did before. So thank you for saying that because I do feel that I was born to do this.
Yes. The way I think about joy and even the idea of purpose, because I often say this, but I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to find my purpose. I'm going to discover my purpose. But purpose is really the thing that you were designed and created to do. It's not something that you have to discover or find when it's literally in you and it's been in you all along. It's just a matter of understanding how to draw it out. And I think there is also a need for the individual to recognize that you get to live in your purpose and it is joyful. When you're committed to knowing who you are and what brings you joy, it naturally draws out your purpose in a way that doesn't feel like work. And it just sounds like that's something that you've come into. And I mean, I don't know your daughter, but I hope that she is she's anchoring herself in some joy and going on a little journey for herself and recognizing that the things that feel good, the things that make her smile, and the things that really leave her feeling fulfilled in all the ways are probably little joy gems and nuggets that will lead her in the way.
Yeah. I think sometimes as human beings, we try to talk ourselves into things or talk ourselves out of it, and I just fundamentally believe that things should not be so hard. Life is hard, no doubt, but things should not be hard, whether it be relationship, employment, if it's right. So doesn't mean you won't have struggles in a relationship or bumpiness in a career, but and sometimes I think we know the answer. We know this is not the right fit. We know this is not the right relationship, whatever you fill in. But yet we're spend so much time trying to convince ourselves that no, 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 if I just change this, where you are really just depriving yourself of ultimately the purpose that you need or the joy that you will, that undoubtedly you'll find if you just make those tough calls. And
Yes.
what I try to instill in both of my children is trust your gut and trust your feelings. Like, don't don't just run away from hard things. That's not what I'm suggesting, but we often know. And you ask many people who were in a company that wasn't the right fit for them, or if they were in a job, they probably knew much, much earlier or sooner than they made action. But talk yourself out of it and you try to it's almost like a badge of honor that I stuck it out. I endured.
Okay.
That doesn't bring you joy. And so while I don't expect that, every single day, is going to be from, 8 to 6 or however my hours are full of just beaming but net, when I take a step back and I look at that week, did that week bring me joy? Absolutely. And when you get to a point where it's not, that's when we need to start to do some reflection and some self-examination and maybe make some different decisions.
Yes.
So, that's the lesson versus what job should she take. But those are the lessons that I try to instill because I just think life is too short to be walking around it so unhappy. And there are a lot of people in whatever the scenario is that are just not happy. And they know it. They know it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm getting so excited. Yes. And not only are they not happy, but I don't think they recognize how this idea of I have to struggle through it and sometimes even glorifying the struggle impacts not only how they show up, but their ability to produce good work. You might be thinking like, oh, I'm going to stick this out if I just work harder, if I just do more. I'm not realizing that not only will it contribute to burnout, but you're actually becoming less effective and impactful when that is the stance and the mindset that you take on. And sometimes I've had clients where, and even in conversations where the idea is, I'm going to stay at this company and I'm just going to do this because it looks good on my resume and things, but I really don't like it. But I'll just stick it out. I'll just stick it out. And sometimes in the conversations that we have, maybe it's not the organization, maybe it's the position that you're in. And
Right.
recognizing, again, what brings you joy? Who are you? Who are you at your core? What season of life are you in? And how does being in this particular position support those things in a way that aligns with not only the corporate vision, but your vision as an individual? Because it matters. When you're able to align the two things, not only does it feel better, but you're able to have a clearer vision. You're able to understand how what you do contributes to the overall impact. And you're also able to, I think, see yourself in it for the long haul. So even when things aren't perfect or pretty, and when you're going through a rough patch, you're committed to something bigger than the moment. And so I think you said something. Actually, you said two things that I really hope the JOYrney listeners pick up on. That it's not about running away from hard things. And joy isn't always about only seeing the bright side. Sometimes I think because joy is deep rooted, it's not a surface level emotion like happiness, because there is a difference. But sometimes in doing the hard thing, that's how you actually arrive at joy. And in each person's case, the hard thing might look different. But I do think that one of the hardest things that a person has to do that many people, I think, push off to the side is taking that moment for reflection and self-examination, because it seems like it's too easy, or I don't have the time to sit down and think about this. I just have to go, go, go. But it's really in making that time to reflect and examine your vision, your values, your mission, that you're able to not only clearly move forward, but you're actually able to take joy in the process of standing in that decision. So I think that that's awesome. Thank you for mentioning that.
Hey, friend, have you ever looked around and thought to yourself, I'm doing everything for everyone else, but somehow, some way, I've lost sight of myself? Trust me, I get it. Between work, motherhood, caregiving, and doing all the things, you are constantly moving and you're doing the right things. Yet somehow, deep inside, something still feels a little off. And you're not quite sure what it is. You just need space to breathe, space to reconnect, and space to rest and recalibrate your priorities as you rediscover yourself in this season with joy. And that is exactly why I created the JOYrney Daily Planner. It's not just a productivity tool. It is a faith-fueled reset that is designed with purpose-driven women like yourself in mind. Women who want more peace, more presence, and more alignment in every area of their daily lives. Inside, you'll find daily prompts rooted in scripture, weekly joy check-ins, room to reflect, realign, and get honest with what God's calling you to do in this season. Because your planner shouldn't help you just get more stuff done. It should help you become more of who you're meant to be. But even better than that, it should help you align yourself with what God's calling you to do. So, with all that being said, if you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving with a little bit of structure and a whole lot of grace, then the JOYrney Daily Planner is waiting for you. Head over to ericalasan.com/planner to grab your copy today and get ready to rest, reflect, and reconnect with joy, one feel-good thing at a time.
Making time for reflection and self-examination with an organization like Pfizer, how is it that the company allows for that time, especially on the executive level? Because things are busy and it is a bigger organization and there's a lot to be done all the time. But is it something where that time is baked into your culture so that people have the time to reflect in that way?
So, yes and no. I mean, so we have periods of time where symbolically so we have something we call growth week, which is actually will happen in February of 2026 again, and that week is a week where people are supposed to be focusing on their development and their growth, taking a moment to just in general think about, pause, and you have some moments. But again, things like that just don't happen in an isolated week because we declare it as such. But it's all of those things. I always say to my team, they're symbolic. It's symbolic to say the company does focus on growth. The company is saying it's important to take a time to reflect. I personally, and then we all have our own, like I would say, micro practices that you have. So I have put time on my calendar that we call focus time. Time in every day, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, where there are no meetings, and it's time for me to just do many things. Sometimes just read an article that some people send me things to read, and I park those things and say, okay, I'm going to do it during my focus time. It could be time to just take a moment to just self-reflect about how the week went, how, what I want to do with my team, a vision. It could be time to just really just pause, like, and not because email after email, meeting after meeting, that's actually not healthy, to be honest. So the focus time,
Okay.
really just me just taking a minute. And if it's a nice weather, just stepping outside and just taking a walk. Or if I'm in the office that day, just getting around to see people and talk to people. Because if you don't have that time, you'll literally go the whole day and be meeting to meeting to meeting. And so those sort of practices are not common. That language of focus time is not a Sherry Cassano term. It's terminology we have in the company. But again, whatever the mechanism that one uses is not really about that. Is it something that is valued? And I think we've recognized throughout the years, and we've had different initiatives some are still here, some are gone, that you do need dedicated time to do these things, that you have to be intentional. These are not things that will just happen by happenstance. If you do not schedule the time, if you do not consciously say, I need some time to do things outside of being in meetings and doing my work, it just won't happen because
Yes.
busy and have full plates. So I think that's more culturally than some of the practices that we have, that some are now gone, that were really focused on that. I think why some of those went away is because we realized that this has to be at the individual level. The company has to have a culture that supports it. But for these things to be sustainable, like, it really has to be internalized at the individual level. We used to have these things called focus week. Okay, company-wide week, no meetings. It was supposed to be doing all of those things that we just talked about. Reflection, focus on your growth, maybe get some external perspective. You can't orchestrate that for 85,000 people. But the culture that says those things are important is more important than this week. That was a symbolic week that probably lost. It really just, we found that there are more effective ways to do it than just declaring this overall week. Because first of all, it's hard to find one week in a company of our size where everybody can just say, no meetings, that wasn't as effective for us. But the principles behind it are certainly something that we try to instill in our employees.
You said something so profound, and just recognizing that on a culture, on an organizational level, and a company may say a thing, but it's really about the individual being able to put it into practice. I think that it's so beautiful that you all have recognized this because one, I don't think that that's something I haven't heard it said out loud very, very often, that organizations recognize the need for joy on a personal level. And I think that there's also something there where thankfully your organization is stating the thing out loud. So it almost gives the individual permission to recognize that their joy and that time for self is actually valuable. There aren't very many places and spaces, I think, that allow the individual the grace of time to consider themselves in how they work. The idea is output, 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 work harder, stronger, longer, do more, do more, do more. But in all of that, there isn't a conversation around like, well, how can you most effectively do this? How can you do this in a way that is joyful? So it's not only that the work is getting done, but it's getting done sustainably in how you're able to create success, or that you're able to create success sustainably. Which brings me to this thought, and one of the things that I've been really excited to dive into in this conversation with you around Pfizer just creating a culture of joy, but literally making joy one of its core values. In 2018, 2019, I believe, I'm not sure, I can't remember which year, but there was a little bit of a facelift or a rebrand or something that was happening where joy was made an official core value. What did that conversation look like? And yeah, what did it look like?
Yeah, so we had four core values that were identified in 2018: courage, excellence, equity, and joy. And I'll answer your question, but I wanted to just piggyback on your last point about excellence is one of our values. So people at Pfizer do incredible things. We have some brilliant people working at our company, and we have accomplished things that people thought were not possible to accomplish. And I see it happen all the time. But we also have joy as a value. So it shows that they don't have to be mutually exclusive. You don't It doesn't mean that we don't play hard or we don't accomplish great things because we have joy as a value. They can sit, and they do sit and coexist together. So I just wanted to make that point. But it really it came into effect from a place of pride. So I'll tell you what joy means. But I think the genesis of the joy value was really about, it's so important to have pride in the company and pride in the work that we do. And so much of what we do should have a lot of pride. We ultimately are trying to help patients. So that brings pride. But the way we define joy is taking pride, recognizing one another, and having fun. And so those three things together is how we define joy in the workplace. But the genesis was really about anchoring in the pride that we should feel in the company, because the thinking is, if you are proud of the work that you're doing, if you're proud of the company that you work for, the people that you work with, boy, your output, you're going to continue to give even more to the company because of that pride, versus people who are just showing up as a job, don't really care. You can see it in customer service. You can tell if you've had really good customer service. You can tell, you're like, that person actually loves the thing that they do. They actually believe in this product, versus the person where you may not get terrible service, but you can tell it's like, okay, they're just showing up to get a paycheck, right? And so it doesn't matter because you're in corporate America. It's the same thing. People who are passionate about what they do, prideful, they love what they do, they love the people who work for, that's going to only benefit the work. It is. It's like you can't contain it. You're that happy, so you're going to give your best to this individual, to this company, et cetera.
Yes. Oh, man. One of the things that you just mentioned was the fact that you all defined joy.
Yes.
I think that's something that people don't necessarily consider. I think many people consider joy as simply a feeling. But in the work that I've done and in the time that I've really, I guess, committed my life to this idea of joy, there's something to be said about recognizing that joy looks different for each person. And on a corporate level, the fact that you were able to define what it looks like for the organization, so you can also hold it as a standard and communicate it as a value to everyone that's involved, is so important. But I also think it really drives the individuals that are a part of the organization to then consider, what does joy mean for themselves? And so I have a really quick question about you and your own personal journey. And what does joy mean for you? And how does your personal joy influence and impact your professional joy in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So joy for me is not really a feeling. Joy for me is at the end of the day when I feel like the work that I did mattered. And that could be in the home or at work. It does it's both.
Yes.
And so I'll give you an example. Joy for me is when my daughter, who's a teenager, wants to come home and wants to tell me about her full day. Or
Mm.
joy for me is when my son is excited to talk to me because, he's won an award or something. But it's not the award, which I'm proud of that, but it's that my job as a mother has mattered, that I'm important enough to them that they want to tell me their day. Like that
Yeah.
of teenagers, I have a 11-year-old, they may not want to talk to you, right? So my fulfillment of a mother is not, yes, of course I feed them, we clothe them, but at the end of the way I define or am I a person that they want to talk to? So for me, that's
Yes.
joy, right? Or similarly in the workplace, am I able to have conversations with people that they walk away saying, wow, Sherry, now I walk away feeling like I know how I'm going to tackle that problem, or thank you for helping me navigate that career situation. So again, is what I'm doing providing meaning? I'm at a point right now where I do derive joy from feeling like I am contributing to making things better, right?
Yes.
It's not that I don't have my own ambitions and things. That's not what I'm suggesting, but it's certainly getting more joy from, eh, you know, am I bringing meaning to my own life and others? That's for me
Yes.
joy, what joy looks like. And so that's why I try to give very specific examples, because it's not just like in the workplace, it's in home. At the end of a long day, do my husband and I, can we just sit there and sit in silence? And does that still feel comfortable? Yes, it does.
Yes.
That's joy for me,
Yes.
because that's how I knew I was going to marry this man, because like date 2, we were watching a movie, the movie ended and it was just the credits rolling and it was silence and it was comfortable. And I said,
Mhm.
okay, well, I didn't declare, okay, he will be my husband. I said, I'm going to be with him for a long time. Can we still do that? Are we still comfortable in each other's presence in the silence? Yes, that's joy for me. So it's about a deeper meaning versus like, oh, am I happy? And actually, I am happy, actually, but it's not, to me, joy and happiness are not the same, right?
Right.
Itself to the other, but the joy part is much more of, for me, about meaning. Am I getting experiences?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I love what you said because the way I consider joy, I also feel like it's not just a feeling. I actually really look at joy as a metric for success. Do I actually feel successful in this moment?
Mhm.
And not only in this moment, but overall, like you said, taking like what the net positive. How am I clear around what I'm doing that feels good and how it contributes to the ability to produce good work, not only for myself, but everyone else around me? And I think that when individuals start to really consider joy, not just as a feeling or not something that's fleeting, because again, that's happiness, very surface level, but when they start to look at it as a tangible metric for success and something that is valuable, it's not elusive. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment in order to have it. But even based on what you were saying, a lot of times what people fail to recognize is that joy is very simple. It is so simple and it doesn't require so much. Ultimately, a lot of the times when people are trying to chase this elusive feeling that they believe is going to bring them success, they're actually moving themselves further away from joy. And not only that, it sometimes becomes then more selfish in the approach that an individual is taking to attain what they believe is joy. But really, joy is also selfless. I can't tell you how many times I've heard women say that, I can't do this because joy is a luxury, or, it's selfish, or people just thinking, well, if you're going to follow your joy, then that's being selfish. But it's actually not. It's one of the most selfless things that you can do in giving of yourself, in recognizing that when you follow joy, when you are clear on what brings you joy and how it contributes not only to your betterment, but the betterment of the community around you, you get to do it all day long. You get to do it all day long. But this makes me think about your personal journey. And now I feel like I'm kind of bringing it forward to bring it back. But this is where we're landing, right? In terms of thinking about the personal, because in what you were saying, we get to understand that joy is not just professional, but it is very personal. And understanding that your personal and your professional don't have to be isolated, that they actually can overlap. And a lot of times, what I hear from people is that they are considering joy in two separate spheres. Like I can't have my personal and my professional joy mixed. But one, the personal actually does make you better for the professional. And in your personal experience, I would now like to talk about motherhood, if that's okay. Because I believe that so many women can benefit from just hearing what it looks like to balance joy as a mother as you're working your way up in the professional space. So, how have you been able to balance the two? I guess let's just start with a very broad question and see where it goes from here. But how have you been able to manage the two?
And I think that's the word, is manage, it's integrate, it's not balance, because boy, it's so hard to, I don't know if you can balance. And I think we should stop saying balance, because it sets this view that everything is equal at the same time. And I've told people, so I'm a mother of two. I have an 18-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. The reason I don't say it's balance is because when I'm traveling on a business trip, by definition, I'm away from my husband and my children. So it's not balanced, right? Then work is a little bit on top, because they're happy, they're home, but it's not the same. But what I try to do, and we've worked, my husband and I together, really hard, is to integrate it so that I'm not at a point where I've ever missed anything important. One of us is always there. And in most cases, for the big things, we are both there. So for us, it could be my daughter or my son is reading, something in the library in front of their class. I never wanted my child to be the student that looked into the audience and they didn't have their parent there. Now, I recognize that is some people's reality, because they may need to work and they don't have an employment where they're able to take off. And I have a lot of empathy for that. But in our case, that really wasn't the case, that we could work things that at least one of us were there. So we tried to really always be thoughtful about, okay, what's the schedule? And we were both working. It wasn't, we didn't even have nannies or anything like that. Sometimes I say, why didn't we do those things? We could have made a little, still are very hands-on, parents. And what we just tried to do is always be really clear about our non-negotiables with our family. And both very career driven, but there were non-negotiables, and that being one of them, what I just said. Big things we can't miss. So if there was a business trip and it was something important going on at the school, and then I had to be in a situation where I could say I'm not going on that trip. And I'm fortunate and very grateful that I work for a company where you don't feel like you have to choose. That if you say, look, family, something's going on, family, it's not even like a hesitation. Okay, I just sent one of my direct reports a note, something was going on, and I said, do what you need to do. And she knew that, but I'm sure it just helps for her to hear me say those words. She didn't get my permission, but I'm sure if you were to ask her, it was just helpful to have your manager say, of course you're going to prioritize your family in this situation. Do what you need to do. The work will be here. And so I felt that I've always had that. So it's been easier to be able to integrate it. But sometimes I don't even say, I think some of it is women particularly put it on themselves. It's not even the employer saying, oh, no, you can't. People have a guilt, like, but I can't ask, or
Yes.
oh, but they will look at me differently, or what, fill in the blank. So sometimes we have to have the courage to say, no, here are my boundaries, and respect my boundaries. But we don't even give people a chance to not respect them, because we self-impose, no, nobody's going to agree to that, or no, how could I say I can't do that? And so I think we have to give ourselves permission that it's okay to prioritize being, having a family, or to prioritize whatever that boundary looks like. Maybe you don't have kids, but there are other boundaries that you're afraid or don't have the courage to put forward. And so that's why, as a working mother, I am 9 out of 10 times, if I'm at a company event and they ask me to introduce themselves, sometimes I get asked to do these leadership, career sessions for women or all colleagues, it doesn't matter. 9 out of 10 times, will introduce myself. I'll say the work stuff, and then I'll say, and by the way, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two, because I think it's important for people to understand that, yes, you can have a career, but also be a mother, or have a career and be a caretaker for those people who are, choosing not to have children or don't have kids. There's a part of your life outside. And this notion that they have to be separate or that they are separate is just not true. And I think the pandemic helped us a lot in that way when it was all so blurred, right? Because now everybody's
Yes.
working from home, or a lot of people working home. You see the camera in the back. Now we have all filters that you don't. But in the beginning of Zoom and stuff, there wasn't all of these filters, or we didn't know how to use them. So you're seeing people's house, you're seeing the kids walk by, you're seeing, but we had to be okay with it because that was the situation we are in. And I think that was actually one of the best things that the pandemic did for us. There was a lot of things that was not good about the pandemic, but I actually think this notion of they're all blurred. Home and life are not these two separate, distinct things, right?
Yes.
If home life is not going well, it's going to bleed into work life and vice versa. If you are not feeling fulfilled at work, if you're not happy, if things are not going, you don't think that's not coming into your loved ones would probably be the first ones to tell you something's not right at work because it's bleeding in. So this notion that they are two separate and distinct, and it's just not true. It's not true. And so, yeah, we have ways to try to manage them. And so you can kind of compartmentalize, but to try to say that they are separate is almost like if you can't accept me as a mom, then Pfizer is not accepting me as Sherry Cassano because that's a part of who I am, our identity. So what companies do, mine being one of them, is you have to embrace like this whole bring your whole self to work. That became a thing, but it's true. You can't say, well, Sherry Cassano mom goes at the door, no, I'm a mom. Now, doesn't mean that I don't have childcare and, I'm not giving Pfizer all my, that's not what that means. Cause I think sometimes people take your words and they twist them around. No, but I am a mom, and me talking about me being a mom should not be something that you can't talk about that at work. Why not? That's a part of I start all of my team calls every week. I have my team call. We start our team call with anybody have moment of joy that they want to share or moment of purpose. We've added moment of purpose, but moments of joy can be things that happen at work, but it often is things going on in people's family. People show pictures from family vacations. They show children's parties. Whatever. We've taken it up. Whatever you. But it's often people are bringing in that family stuff, and I love it because it shows about that whole person, not just the employee, which we get to know quite well, but what are your children's names? What are your spouse's names? We get to see all of that, and that them being able to talk about that moment of joy for them, it brings us all closer together.
Yes.
Love it. Why not? Why not?
Oh my gosh. If I was outside, I'd have a bullhorn and be running around saying, yes, 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 to everything you just said. Oh my goodness. You touched on so many things, and I would love to do a quick touch on each of these things. But one, you mentioned the non-negotiables in your home and what that looks like in terms of personal and professional ways that you anchor your joy in building a culture of joy, not only at work, but in the household. And I would love to know what those conversations look like for the individual who is thinking like, that's a great idea, but how do I begin to do that? But you also mentioned, and I think that this is something that will probably be a little bit of a deeper dive, the guilt that women put on themselves. Because I know it's something that I hear a lot in the work that I do, but I know that it's also something that at one point in my own personal journey to purpose, I had to face. So much of the work that I do with the journey to purpose has come from my own personal experiences, working through them, but also recognizing that there are systems and processes that can support retaining, maintaining, and sustaining joy. But that conversation around guilt is it is such a real one. And I think that part of the problem is that many people don't take the time to reflect on one, what's causing the guilt, two, why they feel the guilt around it, and three, recognizing that you can put that down. You don't have to carry it. So in hearing you mention that, and you mentioned stuff about feeling like you don't have to choose between your career and your family. Is that something that you have learned over time, or is it something that became a practice where now you are very clear on establishing and committing to your boundaries? Or is that something that you think you were able to gain over time simply because of the type of work environment that you have grown in over the past 21 to 25 years?
I think it's a little bit of both. And listen, I am still a work in progress. This guilt thing is so real.
Okay.
I don't know what the root cause of it is among women. Men have it too, I'm sure. But I think underlying is it's probably rooted in some sort of fear that we're not going to be accepted or you're not good enough. I think if I really had to get to it, I mean, there's all guilt. There's the simple mom guilt. Oh, boy, I'm a working mom. Are my kids going to benefit if would they have benefited more if I was a stay at home? There's guilt on so many layers, but I think over time I've gotten better. So I can give you a very clear example that was a pivotal moment for me. That these are like little teaching moments. But I remember when I was pregnant with my second child, my son Logan. When I was pregnant with him, there were a couple of opportunities at the vice president level. So at that point, I was not a vice president level, and there were a couple of positions that were posted that were wonderful. I mean, great positions. Like next level was exactly where I should have been going in my career. But I did the math and I thought, okay, so by the time these jobs are going to take effect, so they would have taken effect, let's say in January, I would have basically been going on maternity leave in March. So I was doing the math. I said, so I would have taken the job, but I only be in it 2 months, and then I would be on maternity leave. And it was, again, back to a boundary. It was very important for me to take my full maternity leave because I had done that with my daughter, and I felt that time was so important. So at that point, I thought I was making the right decision that, you know what, you can't have it all. So I'm not going to apply to this position. I'm going to, another one will come up, but I'm going to pick my family in this case. And I had a very good HR person. So HR people do have HR that came and said, I noticed that you didn't apply. And I said, yeah, well, yeah. And she goes, well, why? Is it the job? I said, well, no, jobs are great. But, I'm pregnant. And, I started talking and I must have said I'm pregnant like 4 times. So she goes, well, let me just make sure I understand this. You did not apply to the job because you're pregnant. And I said, okay, well, when you put it that way, she goes, would you advise anyone else to not
Mm.
apply for a job because you're pregnant? Because by the way, that's discrimination. And I said,
Okay.
I mean, and so she goes, so then why are you treating yourself differently? And it was just, oh, because I didn't think I had in my mind, I didn't think, no one told me this self-imposed, back to this point of why I can speak so passionately, because I took myself out this process. So she goes, why don't you go back and think about if you're going to apply or not? So fast forward, I did apply. I did get the job. I did take my maternity leave. So yes, everything I said, I was in the job for 2 months and then I had to go on. And guess what? When I came back, they were waiting for me and it was no issue. The house
Mm.
it would have been if I would have just taken because I had the guilt, like, but I couldn't either. I would have taken in my mind, I would have had to take a shorter maternity leave or guilty. Like, how could I leave my leaders for these 6 months? It's silly, but again, it's real because I
Yes.
that. And again, fortunately, I had somebody who took the time to hold that mirror in front of me so that I came to a better outcome. But how many people do things like that? It could be a different set of circumstances, but the same outcome. You have taken yourself out of something. You have deprived yourself of something because of guilt that no way it could work out. Okay.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying it's a bit of culturally, yes, because I had a culture that did accept hiring or promoting a person who they knew was going to go in maternity leave in 2 months. And that was acceptable. So yes, culturally that was there. But I also, that experience taught me that if, like, to really check myself to think about, is this really real or is this just in my imagination?
Yes.
Narrative, because we play our own narrative sometimes, oftentimes, quite honestly. And so it's taught me to check my own narrative. But again, I had posted on LinkedIn not that long ago about this, and I did that intentionally because when I have my own reflection moments, I like to share because if I'm making these mistakes, I'm sure many other people. But I had another situation just 2 months ago. I sprained my ankle and literally could not walk. I mean, I had an ankle injury and so really could not walk that well. Was supposed to be presenting in front of the whole company and quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to do that just because I couldn't walk and so we quickly put in place a plan B. My manager was going to cover a portion of it and I was going to have an intern cover another portion of it. But do you know up until the day before I was feeling so guilty. I was feeling so
Mm.
that I was not able to do that. That I was up until the night before trying to figure out a way. Like, okay, if you guys have a wheelchair for me, if I can just get filled into, I mean, all of this nonsense, I can figure it out. And finally, my manager, who is the CHRO of Pfizer, said, Sherry, prioritize your health. We have,
Yes.
we got it. And it wasn't. And so guess what? They did have it. Of course they had it. And beyond them having it, we had this intern get up there and did such a beautiful job that I was
Mm.
like, this plan B was better than the plan A because I've been in front of the company many times. But this young woman got a chance to, in such an eloquent way, represent this content and get her chance to shine. How much better? And so if I would have let my guilt get in the way and hobbled up there or whatever it would have looked like, that opportunity would not have been able to be given to this young woman. So I posted about that intentionally because I wanted to share with people. Again, I am very good about my boundaries. And yet I slipped up when it came to my own health, right? I'm excellent with my boundaries with my family and things like that. I don't even feel any more that there's any guilt about that these days. Because again, I think it's been tried and true. I have a company that supports this. I have a manager who supports this. But with my health, with my own health, and I should know better, I was about to let guilt get in the way of me prioritizing my health. So that's why I say I'm a work in progress. I think we all are a work in progress. But I'm reflective enough to know that's why I posted it because I wanted people, if they could get a nugget or two from my example, to say it's not worth it. And in fact, it's going to all work out. Of course, it's going to work out. It will work out.
Yes. The intention behind it working out, I think being committed to that is what drives so much more than people realize. It's not just about like, oh, I got to force my way. I have to put myself in the position to make sure that it works out. But oftentimes, what I found, even in this conversation of leading with joy, is that the ability to rest is so necessary in that process. Rest and reflections, and recognizing that doing so not only benefits you as the individual that is leading or a part of the experience, but also in the ability to create further impact outside of the experience. Oh my goodness.
Tell you, joy is the right expression for when I was watching this global broadcast and I saw this intern, her name is Esther, get up there and not only deliver it, she nailed it. That brought me so much joy because, again, what I said, bringing meaning. And I'm like, oh, how silly was I? Like, of course, this was a better app. Why didn't I think? And that brought me such joy to see her get up there and do what she did. You know, really, I don't know if I would have been able to do that at 20 years old or 21. I don't know how old she is, but as a young adult, the way that she did that. So it was just so, so good to see for sure.
One of the things that you mentioned was the fact that in this process of you releasing your guilt or even becoming aware of it was the fact that you had someone reflect to you how you were showing up and even considering your own possibilities for yourself. So maybe they saw something that you didn't see. But I also think that it's really important to recognize the ways in which isolation or just thinking in your own
Yeah,
head can keep you from fully experiencing joy in a moment, but also just like growing and the need for mentorship and just having conversations, creating space for conversations. Because I don't know what your relationship was with that HR manager at the time that you mentioned, but it sounds like you were close enough that she could pull you aside and even ask you
absolutely.
about.
Absolutely. So I didn't have this language then, but I reflect back. I've always had a group of people. Now I refer to them as my little board of directors, but a group of people that mentors, sponsors, people who I believe know me and can give me kind of honest advice, opinions. And I don't call them all for every topic. There's different people that I may lean into for different things. But I do think, regardless of where you are in your career, it's important to get a group of people who know you and can help give you some advice, whether they work at your company or not. Although I do think it's helpful to have somebody who works at the company to understand the dynamic. Like sometimes, people can give you advice, your friends, but they don't know the players, they don't know the culture. So I think my board of directors has grown outside of people who work at Pfizer, but it certainly started with the group of people who I think took the time to care for me and care about me. And I think a lot of them started as mentorship relationships. Some of them were sponsors in the sense that they personally advocated for my career on my, on my behalf and things like that. But you do need people to put that mirror up as this woman did for me. And you're right. She was the HR person for HR people, but she also was a mentor of mine. And so because of that, I think even more so, she felt comfortable to just do a double click to say, and why did I not see your application? And she was very open because if I would have said to her, you know what, um, I'm going to prioritize being a mom right now, and I don't want to take any additional responsibility. It's not the right time. She would have completely respected that because that would have been my answer. But my answer wasn't that. My answer was, well, I'm pregnant and I don't think it would be right basically to the business for me to be gone for 6 months. That's very different. So I think she approached it really with no judgment. She was just seeking to understand. It's just that when she heard the answer, it was like, wait a minute, I need to really correct your thinking because your thinking is not right, actually. So I'm grateful to her for that, for sure.
I love that you mentioned the little board of directors. I call them the vibe tribe. Who's in your vibe tribe? Because when they know who you are and they're clear on the vision that you have for your life, not only professionally, but also personally, and what you want it to look like, feel like, taste like fully immersive experience, they can not only help you get there, in the ways that they can, but they're also there to hold you to that vision so that you don't slip up and forget it yourself. It's almost like they help put you back on the right path because they know you so deeply. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. This has been an amazing conversation. What would you say are 3 of your top tips for women considering how to navigate climbing or moving up in the executive space? And I almost want to add a little bit of a caveat for this, but especially considering the women who are working mothers who may be in this position of thinking, well, I have to choose between my family and career because, that's just the thing that we have to navigate.
Yeah. Top 3 tips. So
Yes.
and this is in no order, but I think first of all, build your support system around you because that can be internal to the company, but also practically. I mean, what I didn't tell you is I'm very also clear while I was able to do the things that I was able to do is we have a very strong support system. So my husband is a very hands-on father. And, so we would navigate. There are times where he had to step back so that I could, do the things that I needed to do. And so that's a part of it. My mother, fortunate enough to have my mother still alive. She came and lived with us when it was time for me to go back to work, when my son, was born, and stayed with us for a year so that I didn't have to worry. Again, I'm still the mother, but it's nothing like your mother. To me, that's the next best thing for me. Is that if it's not your
Yes.
mother is there. And so I had a really good, strong support. I have a very good friend of mine who ran a in-home daycare. So she, so again, I had people around me, and I think it looks different, but I would be, at least in my case, it would be really wrong of me to not acknowledge that yes, you can have it all, but you need to have the right support systems in place to help. So I think that is important, and knowing what that looks like and who that is, it looks different for all of us, but for me, that was key and still remains key to this day. So that to me is important. Second, about the career and climbing the ladder is my assumption is there has to be the competence. So I'm not going to get into you need to know your craft and you need to be excellent at what you do. To me, that is given. I mean, that to me, I'm saying it. So obviously, I guess it doesn't remain unsaid. But to me, that's not one of the tips. To me, that has to be like a given. To get to this level, you need to be do what you do exceptionally well. But I do think that one tip that people don't talk about enough is to be authentic, because I find that so many people spend time, and it's exhausting trying to figure out the version of what they expect people to want them to be. When in the reality is there's no better version than you. Like somebody said to me once, you are your competitive advantage. You, because there's no one else like you. You have to be you. And so I do think people can tell when you're being authentic or not. And while they may not like put their full finger on it to say, oh, she's being inauthentic it does show up in other ways, right?
Yes.
People gravitate to those who are being their true selves. People like, and you probably do better work when you're unburdened by also trying to figure out, did I sound right? How do I need to present myself? That is just way too much energy that could be channeled to actually doing your job. So I think that
Yes.
tip that is probably not talked about enough. Having the courage to be you and to really looking at you as I'm uniquely me. That is a competitive advantage instead of trying to fit the box. And I think we're doing better as individuals to kind of getting to that point. But I still think that that is something that people don't look at as a differentiator. I think people will tell themselves, "I need to be myself," but I don't think people yet see it as a differentiator. So that's why I want to put that as being to rising through the ranks because I do think it does differentiate you and it makes people want to follow you, right? I tell
Yes.
my team will know she's crazy. She's have a laugh. She'll, I'll get up in front of the whole company and dance because you know what? That's what I felt to do in the moment. And I have a culture where that can be embraced and we can have fun and still do good work, right? But I'm that comfortable in my skin at this point where I feel like it's not career limiting to do that, right? It doesn't mean you're professional or any, but being an authentic leader because just to quickly go off on when I danced in front of the whole company, it wasn't like I was intending to dance. They played my music late. So, we're supposed to have walk up music and the walk up music was delayed. And so they started playing it when I was on the stage. So I'm like, well, you're going to play some music, then I'll do a little dance. So it wasn't like it was planned. It was completely not planned. But I have to tell you, I got more emails and Teams chats from employees, some I knew, some I didn't know, about me dancing and how much they appreciated that more than the content I was presenting. Okay. So what is going on? And it wasn't about the dance. It was, wow, she's having fun. Wow, she's making it fun to be a leader up there. That's what it was about. It wasn't about the dancing. So authenticity would be tip 2. And my third tip would be, I think, about the boundaries that I talked about earlier, that
Mm.
especially because you're doing the lens about the working mom, you need to start the boundaries early. I think in general, boundaries, again, relationship, anything, you have to set the rules from the beginning. It's actually not fair to people when you try to change the rules halfway through. And
Oh,
if you're clear from the beginning about sort of what those boundaries are, doesn't mean boundaries can't evolve because actually, as my kids get older, I have more flexibility, right? I used to have a boundary where I would never travel over a weekend. I just wouldn't. If it needed to depart on a Saturday or Sunday, well, then I didn't, do it. I needed to leave. That boundary is actually not a boundary as much anymore because my kids are older, right? So they can evolve, but be clear about whatever they are and be okay with it. It's like unapologetic, right? It's okay. And if you have a company that or a position or a workplace that can't accept your boundaries, you have to be prepared. Then that's not a fit. That's
mhm.
that the boundaries have to change. Because if it's a true boundary, and I don't use the word boundary, Lou, boundary should be you can't cross it. So if it's a true boundary, and it's not like you have 1,000 boundaries, but if it's a true boundary, and that person, that company, that position is not able to meet it, then it's not a fit at that time.
Yes.
It's okay and be unapologetic about that. That's
Yes.
that's the tip.
Yes. Mic drop. Mic drop moment. Oh my goodness. This has been wonderful. In everything that you said, one of the things that comes to mind in the way that I approach the conversation around joy, it's really about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your space. But the space isn't just the physical space, it's also the mental space. But that does require rest. That does require reflection. That does require knowing yourself and the boundaries that you need to hold others to, but most importantly, hold yourself
Yep.
to because you set the tone, you set the stage for all of these things, especially as a woman. And, if you're someone who has a family or you're taking care of others, your ability to maintain those things for yourself actually does allow you to show up better for others. And being clear around
Can I
the non negotiable.
can I just say one thing? You prompted me on something that I wanted to address because
Oh,
your audience is mainly women, but maybe
yes.
you said something earlier that people say, I don't have time to be happy. I don't have time to find joy. And because that bothers, because you're right, people do say it. And I have to clear this up. I have to give this tip. I hope this does not get cut out of the podcast, because the notion of you putting your oxygen mask on first, which we all know on the airplane, that is real. Like, you have to take care of yourself first. It's not being selfish to make sure that you are protecting your own peace, your own mental health, your own happiness, your own joy, whatever, in order to give to others. Like, this idea that I don't have time, because it just makes no sense. And I don't know if this is linked to the women guilt or what it is linked to, but you have to take care of yourself before you're able to give to anyone else. It just doesn't work. And so you absolutely should prioritize those things that bring you joy, because likely if you are finding the time to do those things, you'll be able to give even more to other people. So this notion that's mutually exclusive, I'm not sure where it came from, but I hear it a lot as well. So I apologize for interrupting, but I wanted to jump in on that point before, and then we moved on. So now I'm zipping.
Please you don't need to zip anything. That was amazing, because it's something that I think is so deep rooted. And when you said you don't know where it comes from, I do think a lot of that conversation around guilt comes from a fear of and sometimes needing to like grow in courage. But I think it really comes down, the true root of it is a desire to be loved. And it's a desire to be loved. But when you are clear on the fact that you are already loved and highly valued and favored, it just allows you to move differently. And even to your point of authenticity, one of the reasons why I harp on joy so much, and why I really believe that joy is a ministry, but it's because joy allows you to access the most free version of yourself. And when you are free, nobody can tell you nothing. I'm sorry. Like, you show up differently, you live differently, you lead differently, you love differently. You don't take prioritizing yourself as something to be considered selfish, because you realize that not doing it actually comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. You'll pay for it later. And in your relationships, I think being one of the most prominent parts of your life where it shows up. And you may then realize, once you get there, I could have made different decisions. I could have made different choices. But then, in the meantime, while you didn't prioritize joy, bitterness, anger, resentment, all these things starts to spring up. And it's like, well, where did this happen? How did it happen? And it came because you didn't make yourself a priority, and no one's going to do it for you. Oh my gosh, I want to keep talking, but I know you have a hard stop in the next 4 minutes. But this has been absolutely wonderful. Sherry, thank you so much for your time. I really hope that the JOYrney listeners have gained so much from just gleaning from your wisdom and your experience. Again, thank you for bringing so much of yourself to this conversation, both in terms of showing up in the workplace and how to build that culture of joy on an organizational level, but helping those who are here, hopefully listening, recognize that it doesn't just stop at work. Joy is necessary at the workplace, at home, and beyond. So for anyone who's listening, if you would like to follow Sherry's journey as she continues to lead, love, and live with joy, please, Sherry, let us know where they can follow you.
You can follow me on LinkedIn, but I don't know what my LinkedIn link is, but it's Sherry Cassano. I believe I'm the only Sherry Cassano, Cassano.
And I'll be sure to link that in the show notes for any of you who are listening and looking to follow Sherry and her journey.
Wasn't that powerful? Sherry's journey is such a beautiful reminder that joy isn't just a nice to have in leadership. It's a strategic advantage for your team, for your culture, but more importantly, for your legacy. If this episode blessed you and left you feeling encouraged, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. And for my executive leaders, HR teams, and culture builders tuned in, if today's conversation stirred something in you around what joy could look like in your workplace, I have something for you. It's called the Joy Culture Diagnostic. This quick diagnostic helps leadership teams assess burnout, disengagement, and culture gaps, along with what steps will create a more joyful, human-centered workplace. It only takes 2 minutes and it'll let you know exactly where you can start. You can find the assessment at ericalasan.com/joy-diagnostic. But I'll also be sure to include it in the show notes and in the description box below. That's all I have for you today. And as always, thank you so much for being here. Until the next time, keep living, leading, and loving from a place of rest and joy. And remember, we're on the journey together, one feel-good thing at a time. Bye. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the JOYrney To Purpose podcast. If you're ready to take what you learned today and put it into action, then friend, you might just be ready to take a Joy Quest, my step-by-step experience that is designed to help you reclaim your time, rest, and your peace without the guilt. Head over to ericalasan.com/joy-quest, or you can visit the link in the show notes to start your journey today. And remember, we're on the journey together, one feel-good thing at a time. Bye.